Good morning, everyone. It's a real honor for me to be here at the largest ever CANSEC, and I want to thank CADSE for bringing us together, and I especially want to thank the innovators, industry leaders, and public servants filling the hall today. CANSEC goes far beyond your traditional exhibition. It is a practical, execution-focused engine room of continental security. And for me personally, it's a privilege to be back here in Ottawa, particularly at this critical and in some ways difficult juncture. It's no secret that the relationship between the United States and Canada has been under stress of late. I'm from Minnesota, so we speak in understatement. We're operating in an environment marked by genuine bilateral friction. There are questions of policy over tariffs, trade flows, supply chains, defense expenditure metrics, procurement timelines. And there are questions of dignity in the face of bullying and coercion and, yes, insults. Meanwhile, the international order is under great stress as well. Prime Minister Carney's remarkable speech at Davos described this as a moment of rupture. He declared that the post-Cold War rules-based international system is broken. He called on middle powers like Canada to work together against great power coercion, to reduce their strategic dependence on the United States, and to forge new strategic alliances and partnerships. It was a quite remarkable speech, a historic speech, delivered with remarkable clarity and conviction. No surprise from a man that I've greatly admired for a long time. Now, I agree with the Prime Minister on his core premise that we have indeed reached the end of the post-Cold War era. A new era is starting to come into view. But the final shape of this new era is still highly contested, fluid, and unwritten. I further agree with the Prime Minister that every major nation, including Canada, should be thinking in terms of reducing dependencies and increasing resilience in light of all of the fast-moving events in the world and in light of the natural capacities Canada has both to develop more indigenously and to connect to a larger range of partners around the world. But I do not believe that this global shift, that these changes in the international system, that the current challenges in the bilateral relationship should mark a permanent rupture in the essential partnership between the United States and Canada. And I do not believe that Canada should somehow equate the United States and China over the long term. An enduring, deep, and sustained relationship between our two countries simply cannot become a relic of a bygone system. Yes, we have hit profound difficulties, whether that takes the form of tariffs or offensive political rhetoric. Yes, our relationship will change. That's natural, that makes sense. Just as the world will look different in the future, I think it's right to say our relationship will look different in the future. But I don't believe that we should be destined for a dimmer relationship, a weaker relationship. That we have to build one, that we have to enjoy one that is to the mutual benefit of both of our nations. I don't think that the more negative outcome is inevitable, and I think it would leave us both worse off. Because the United States and Canada, living side by side with one another, benefiting from one another economically, socially, in terms of national security, this has been and can be a fantastic dividend for our peoples. We have to find a new way, in new forms, with new modes to move forward. Now, I'm not trying to whistle past the graveyard on challenges and difficulties, but I take the long-term view here about what is fundamentally in the interest of Canada and the United States. I believe that we are bound by what I would call a triple destiny. We're bound by geography, we're bound by our democracies, and we're bound by the technology and the technological future that we build together. This is a framework that anchors the US-Canada partnership, and one that can and should extend outward to a network of democratic partners from Europe to the Indo-Pacific. Let me start with the immutable reality. Geography is destiny. Our shared continental perimeter demands our close and enduring security cooperation. Let's just look north. The Arctic is no longer a frozen, impenetrable shield that insulates North America from global threats. The ice is thinning, shipping lanes are opening, our adversaries are moving with speed. We're witnessing an unprecedented expansion of Russian military infrastructure across the high north, coupled with explicit, well-funded Chinese ambitions to project power into the region. The Arctic has transformed from a geographic barrier into an active theater of strategic and economic competition. Look also at the rapid developments in cheap, abundant, long-range drones and the corresponding proliferation of missile technology, and look at those trend lines over time. If a hypersonic cruise missile or an advanced long-range drone tracks towards North American airspace, it threatens us collectively. And that's why the modernization of NORAD is an existential requirement for continental security. With all the steps that Canada is taking that General Menard just laid out so well, when Canada moves forward to overhaul over-the-horizon radar capabilities, upgrade maritime patrol fleets, deploy next-generation fighter capabilities, it's executing a core act of sovereign self-defense that also helps secure all of North America. I would also submit that our continental geography is inextricably linked to the maritime and territorial security of our democratic allies globally. The defense of our flanks is structurally connected to the defense of the Euro-Atlantic through NATO and the preservation of a free and open Indo-Pacific alongside partners like Japan, Korea, and Australia. Furthermore, geography applies to our shared need for supply chain resilience and industrial strength as well, something I will come to later in my remarks. The geographic integration of the US and Canadian industrial footprints has made our shared border the most critical industrial artery on Earth. And we have the chance in the future to turn this continental core into an anchor for a broader strategy among industrialized democracies. Not just how we think about North American integration, but a vision of a deeper trade and a deeper trade, industrial, and innovation ecosystem with allies in Europe and Asia. This leads to our second reality. Democracy is destiny. Let's be candid. Our democracies are loud, they're messy, they're frequently unpredictable. We experience elections that shift national policy directions. We have boisterous legislative debates, independent courts, a highly inquisitive free press, populations that openly voice their opinions. Our adversaries and competitors look at this chaotic process and they can convince themselves that they're witnessing a form of structural weakness. Dictators and authoritarians look at the political polarization in Washington or the federal provincial debates in Ottawa, and they conclude that open societies lack the stamina, the cohesion, and the long-term will to compete. They're just wrong. That messiness gives us a resilience, an adaptability, and an underlying common purpose. The institutional, legal, and human tissue that connects the United States and Canada, and that connects us to a broader democratic world, runs deep. It's woven into the shared DNA of our peoples, a baseline belief in individual liberty, the rule of law, human rights, institutional accountability. And yes, also a deep respect for sovereignty. I've said before that if I were a Canadian citizen listening to the head of state of my neighbor question whether my country had a right to exist, to be an independent state, I would have a very, very hostile reaction to that. I get it. I also get the argument that was embedded in the Prime Minister's speech in Davos, which is, look, we can't put all our chips on one number on the roulette table because the United States has shown its capacity and willingness in this administration to weaponize interdependence against Canada. I get that too. And that points to the kind of diversification you're pursuing. The way in which Canada has chosen to try to deepen its economic ties, its innovation ties, indeed its defense ties with Europe, with India, with other democratic nations around the world, that is totally logical. It makes sense to build up a web of partnerships like that. When I was National Security Advisor, I conceived of the notion of resilience, of democratic resilience, and of building the necessary scale among our allies, not just about how the United States related bilaterally to a number of other countries, but how we built a collective lattice work of partnerships. So we tried hard to connect the Euro-Atlantic to the Indo-Pacific. We worked to connect allies like Japan and Korea, not just deeper to us, but to one another. And I think Canada taking a view that it is going to build its links out with every other major democratic ally and partner in the world. This is a positive thing and can be connected over the long term to a deeper, healthier, more balanced relationship between the US and Canada as well. Now, one thing I do think we have to be extremely cautious about is seeing China, seeing Beijing as inherently a more predictable or stable partner than the US, and getting drawn into deeper dependencies with China, or letting our guard down to the kinds of predatory practices that frankly can simply swamp or overwhelm or hollow out domestic industry. And we're seeing this trajectory with the overcapacity of Chinese manufacturing in multiple sectors threaten the core industrial bases of many countries around the world, not just here in North America. On this notion of predictability, first of all, predictability can be a plus. It can also be a challenge. One of the things that is entirely predictable about China is that if an independent nation does something that Beijing takes offense to, it will react in ways that are deeply coercive, weaponizing supply chains, or attempting to penalize sovereign choices, or even simply arresting another country's citizens on trumped up charges. Canada itself has experienced this firsthand. But more fundamentally, my proposition today, when I say that democracy is destiny, is that you can't substitute the more temporary transactional predictability of an authoritarian regime for the deeper, in my view, over the long run, more foundational reliability of a fellow democracy. True resilience can only be built within a global network of partners who operate under the same principles, respect the same contracts, cherish the same freedoms. And so whatever the political moment we're traversing, I retain a baseline confidence that our shared democratic destiny remains a long-term advantage. So this brings me to the third pillar, and frankly, a major focus of this gathering, the destiny of technology and the technology future we can and must build. We are living through a profound moment of technological transformation in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, autonomous systems, and synthetic biology. Who leads in these technologies matters, both because leadership confers economic and strategic benefits, and because it provides the opportunity to shape the standards and rules of the road that govern them. The technologies of the future, in my view, have to be engineered to reflect our deepest democratic values. And we need these tools to do what free societies have always done at the frontiers of discovery: solve big, hard, existential problems of our time. Yet maximizing that immense potential requires an unyielding commitment to responsible development of these technologies. As we push the boundaries of what these systems can do, we have to be intentional about constructing robust, clear guardrails to manage against systemic risk, safety failures, or deliberate misuse. True technological leadership is not a reckless race to deploy at all costs. It's the strategic discipline to innovate safely, transparently, and accountably. This is especially true at the intersection of advanced technology and our military and intelligence enterprises. AI-enabled systems already play a growing role in logistics optimization, intelligence analysis, cyber vulnerability detection, and targeting. Over time, these capabilities are going to increasingly shape how militaries train, plan, and fight. Our competitors and adversaries are already integrating AI capabilities precisely to bypass traditional Western military advantages. We therefore have to up our game in deploying AI across our national security enterprises. And that requires not just technical investment, but organizational change, cultural change, including new acquisition pathways and new norms for human-machine teaming. And the challenge here is even more acute because rivals are unlikely to be bound by the same principles and guardrails. Our policy frameworks have to stimulate rapid and responsible adoption of AI by our national security communities, incorporating risk management commitments to ensure effective human oversight and alignment with core values. I've made the argument in my country that this adaptation cannot, for us, rest on US capabilities alone. It has to be built on a network defense, the integration of advanced technology across allied militaries in ways that multiply rather than merely aggregate power. Now, when we look at the future of bilateral defense trade, we have to acknowledge that traditional procurement models are just too slow for software-defined warfare. We've historically treated software like hardware, trying to purchase advanced digital capabilities through bureaucratic processes that were designed for buying trucks or boots. But as the war in Ukraine is making clear every single day, the advantage in modern conflict goes to the side that can update its code, deploy its algorithms, and adapt its sensor networks in hours, not years. Canada has been taking remarkable steps just in the last year to modernize and accelerate its defense investments, with the Defense Industrial Strategy, with the 2% pledge, with the stand-up of a new agency, and so much more. And the work you are doing to intentionally build out, grow, and energize your domestic defense industry. It presents a huge opportunity for things we can all do together to increase efficiency and interoperability, including syncing our R&D priorities and systematically dismantling the regulatory roadblocks like restrictive export control interpretations that prevent a dual-use technology developed by an innovator in Canada from being rapidly scaled and deployed into a joint allied defense program. In this sense, taking down these barriers is a fundamental matter of national security. I want to just close my remarks by spending a moment talking about something that General Menard mentioned in his opening comments, the link between defense investment and overall economic, industrial, and innovation strength for a country. And this really comes home in a dramatic way with something that people like Sam D'Amico and Noah Smith have called the electric tech stack. When we talk about this stack, we're looking at 4 core components that are horizontally integrated across multiple different sectors: drones, electric vehicles, robotics, across defense and commercial applications. And these 4 components are batteries, permanent magnet electric motors, semiconductors, and power electronics. For too long, Western policymakers have treated electrification almost entirely as a climate or green energy issue. This is not the way we need to think about it. As Noah Smith has framed it, the electric tech stack is an issue of national and military power and fundamental industrial capacity. We see this in the way that drones have become key to hard power, small, attritable systems rewriting the rules of tactical engagement and ultimately reshaping the strategic landscape. If nations cannot manufacture the electric tech stack securely and at scale, their defense architecture is structurally compromised. But here's the second, more hopeful truth. If a nation can master the electric tech stack, it suddenly possesses the baseline capability to manufacture an increasingly large percentage of everything in the modern economy. So building a resilient tech stack has to be an objective, and it is an objective that neither the US or Canada can achieve in isolation, nor entirely within our own continent. The industrial math requires a global network of trusted partners. So by deliberately aligning national industrial strategies together, we can construct the core continental spine of this stack, but simultaneously connect this spine to our allies globally. And true supply chain resilience means scaling this model. It means ensuring that from the mine to the microchip, the entire energy backbone of our security architecture is diversified across a global coalition of trusted nations. So confronting all of the challenges before us should remind us, when I talk about these 3 destinies, this triple destiny, that destiny is not a script that has already been written for us, where you simply sit back and watch it unfold. The triple destiny I've described this morning, the destiny of our geography, our democracy, our technology, it has to be an active choice. And it's a responsibility that demands courage, focus, and a willingness to break through short-term challenges to see and seize the big picture long-term. We face a real test right now. There are those who say, never let a crisis go to waste. Can we use the current moment to move away from a relaxed partnership based on easy assumptions toward a deeply integrated alliance that looks to the future in new and different ways, integrated and diversified with multiple different democratic allies and partners around the world, based on shared values and interests in a highly contested world? That is the question. And I believe the answer to that question is yes. We are tied by the very earth beneath our feet. We are anchored by the values that define our democracies, and we can and should win the future together through the technology we create. So let us choose that destiny, let us embrace that responsibility, and let's get to work. Thank you very much for listening to me today.